Oh, we're recording now? Okay, cancel.
Welcome to the Wealth Project Podcast. Join us as we take the journey from employee to entrepreneur. Now your hosts, Sergio Suarez and Marcos Suarez.
Welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Project Podcast. This is episode 15. I'm one of your hosts, Marco, alongside my co-host, Serge. How's it going, Serge?
Not bad. How are you?
Doing good, man. Another week. Welcome back. I forgot last week, so I got you this week.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. A little recognition goes a long way.
I understand you got some business news for us today.
Yeah. So the news article that I found for this week is actually an interesting one for us, and it's because it has to do with the video program Zoom, which is the app that we use to record our podcasts, and we use them for webinars. We've used them in the past for webinars for our other network marketing business, and so it's an amazing program. It's a piece of software that you could have up to 100 people and host webinars and share your screen and everything like that. So if you haven't checked it out, I believe we have a link in it on our resources page. Marco, correct me if I'm wrong.
We do.
And we also speak about it in one of Marco's blog posts where he explains some of the best free tools that we like to use. But anyways, so Zoom has priced their IPO, so their initial public offering, so they're going public at $36 per share, and that's a pretty big chunk of money for an initial public offering. So they've priced it at $36 per share last Wednesday, which gives the company an overall value of $9.2 billion. I mean, that's just unbelievable for I'm not trying to take it away from Zoom, but for a piece of software.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
No kidding. And I think you had mentioned earlier that just 2 years ago, Zoom was estimated at $1 billion. So it's 9 times the growth or something like that.
Yes, they have 9 times. So yeah, in 2017, they had a private valuation at $1 billion. So they are 9 times that just 2 years later.
Yeah, Zoom definitely cannot complain about that. Growing 9 times in 2 years. Heck, I hope we can manage to do that. Let's open up 2021 Wealth Project Podcast, $9 billion.
That's right, eh? And you know what? That goes with a lot of what we're going to talk about today, and that's how to brand your business. And we're going to talk about it mostly right now because, as we always say, branding your business is always changing, especially the online world. So this is how to brand your business in 2019. So one cool thing that I read, and entrepreneur.com says your brand is your promise to your customers. I mean, that's so huge. That is the number one, I guess, driver that should drive your whole business. And your brand basically tells what your customer can expect from your product and your service. I think a very important part is you have to differentiate yourself from your competitors. And we've said this before, I think, in episodes, but you got to find your niche, and you just find your spot in that niche and be different. And even, not just in your niches in online business world, but in any business, you got to find what makes you different from your competitors.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there and I'll talk about it. In an earlier blog post that I did, I actually made this kind of comparison where if you're walking down, the beach and you see an ice cream shop and there's one on one corner of the block and there's another on the other corner of the block, you notice one has this huge lineup and the other one has nobody in it. So you go into the first ice cream shop with nobody in it, you look at the menu, everything looks normal. They offer all the flavors, chocolate, vanilla, whatever you want. Everything looks normal, so why don't they have any customers? So you head over to the second ice cream shop at the other end of the block, and you go in there and you look at the menu, and you notice, well, the flavors kind of seem the same, but then you get up to the line and you see this guy at the ice cream shop, he's hand rolling his ice cream, and he's dipping the cones and chocolate and all that stuff. They're selling the same product, but he's stood out because he's doing something different, and that's what basically your brand comes down to.
Yeah, I absolutely love that example. It's an example of adding your own personal touch to something that's very simple. I mean, I would say a pretty competitive business. Ice cream shops. I'm sure they're everywhere, but doing that little thing where you're hand rolling. I mean, you're still getting the same product at the end, but just because he's hand rolling, he's going to do that much better. And we have some awesome examples for you later on about some absolutely major branding. Brands, I guess you could call them, that are just absolutely phenomenal. So so basically your brand is who you are, who you want to be, and who people perceive you to be. So it's your image in the online business world.
Definitely. And so the next thing when it comes to your brand, or when it comes to branding any business, I guess, is you need to build a brand strategy. And the way I like to do this is it's business basics with really anything. Is you really want to ask yourself the 5 W's and the H, which is the what, when, where, why, and how. And I think I only said 4 W's, but there's another one in there, I'm sure. But basically, that's basically the questions you want to ask yourself when you're building your brand and you're doing your strategy for anything. So, how, what, where, when, who, why, like, what do you plan on communicating and delivering in your brand message?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of goes into carries on to my next subject here, and that's defining your brand. So, once you've really got to figure out what your brand, once you've kind of figured out what your strategy is, then you have to come up with a plan of what the brand is. And most importantly, and most big successful companies have this, and it's what's your company's mission. So what is the mission? What are you trying to do in the business, and what makes you different? Kind of goes into writing out your strategy, right? So, what are the benefits? What are the benefits and features of your products and services? So what are people going to come to you and benefit? Why should I come to you over the guy across the street? So, figure that all out. What do your customers already think of your brand? So, maybe you're an existing company, and a lot of companies rebrand. Sometimes things don't work out. One of the example I think I can think of from our lifetime, at least from my lifetime, Domino's Pizza. Domino's Pizza was doing terrible. I would say probably about, maybe 15, maybe not even, but maybe around 15 years ago. I'm pretty sure they were on the brink of probably bankruptcy. I mean, they were not doing well. And to be honest, their pizza wasn't very good. So they decided to rebrand, restructure their menu, figure out a new crust for their pizza, new different types of pizzas. They rebranded completely, and now they're very successful again. So that's a very good example of what your customers already think of your brand. So if you've been around already, if you're new to this, then you don't have that those customer bases yet, but you will. What qualities do you want your customers to associate with your company? Right off the top of my head, if I'm thinking, if I own a hotel, so, qualities would be comfort. I mean, that's the one thing I would want my hotel to be. I want them to feel at home. I want them to lay on the bed, and it would be the softest, warmest bed that they've ever been on. Be convenience, have convenience where, they have a coffee machine and they have maybe a microwave or, stuff like that, and just make them feel comfortable. So, I mean, that's an example of what I would want, if I had a hotel, what I'd want my customers to associate my company with.
Yeah, and we talk about it all the time. We refer back to it, and it's always quality is the most important thing. Quality is eventually going to lead to quantity, right? I mean, if you can satisfy one customer at your hotel, chances are they can go word of mouth, talk to another person, and all of a sudden that person comes to town. They're going to stay at your hotel because they've heard good things about it, right? And that eventually just grows. So it's definitely important to define your brand and ask yourself these questions. The next thing that you want to do that sort of ties in with what we just spoke about is you want to do your research, and basically you want to learn the needs, the habits, and desires of your current and your prospective customers and clients in the future, right? So basically, like Serge said, going back to his hotel example, if you go to a hotel, ask yourself, what do you want out of a hotel, right? Like, what would make you return? If chances are, if you wouldn't return, why do you expect your customer to return?
Exactly. You got to learn, what your customers' needs are, what their habits are, what their desires. Like Marco said, do your research, right? And I think it's such a great example. So we're going to keep referring back to the hotel thing, but yeah, figure out if you're in an area, what area are you in, what city, what country are you in, and then figure out what those needs and habits are of those customers. So I think that's really important. Um, so to move on to the next thing, so once you've done your research, you've kind of defined your brand. Now it's time to market your brand. So it's time to develop your brand and become an entity, in the online in the business world. So the first thing that would be I think one of the most important things is creating a great logo. And it doesn't have to be, something absolutely insane. It could be something simple, but something that's very relative and something that's memorable, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of places you can do this. Like it doesn't have to be expensive. You can get relatively professional looking logos for relatively cheap. Like with our podcast, if you looked at our logo, you wouldn't expect that, we got it off of Fiverr, and Fiverr is just like this place where aspiring freelancers, they just want to build their portfolio. So they're willing to do work for a little bit cheaper, but it's still professional quality work. I just looked it up as he was speaking. Another great website that people are using is called Upwork. So basically there's a bunch of, you look it up online, freelancers looking to do logos or whatever it is you need for your business, and you'll find plenty of different resources that you can check out.
Yeah, and cheap. I mean, I think we paid like $5-10 for our logo, and our guy was awesome, and he created about 5-6 different types, and me and Marco sat down, chose the one we liked the most. We asked him to tweak it. He tweaked it for free, and and we love it. So the next thing would be to develop a tagline. And I love talking about this because immediately everybody refers to, what popped up in my head is, McDonald's. They do such a great job with their taglines. So anybody that knows, da 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 da, we're loving it. I mean, everybody knows that and then associates it with McDonald's. So that was such a, catchy little song that they came up with, and a phrase that, absolutely caught everybody's attention.
I like that you use McDonald's as the example for the tagline, because as soon as you said it, that's immediately the first thing that popped into my head. When I heard tagline, I said McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Yeah. Everybody knows it. That's such a successful tagline,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the first one that's going to pop into everybody's head for sure. Actually, another good one they have, what is it? Only $1 all summer or whatever for their dollar drinks.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I mean, they're brilliant at it. It's great. So the next thing is to design templates and standards for your marketing. So, design something that's, going to be standard all across your board, and just have those marketing tools ready to go. So again, you could use tools like Fiverr that could, you could build maybe some Facebook ad images, or Google AdWords images, Facebook posts. There's a lot of people that can help you with that, or you can create your own. I use an amazing program that I love called Canva, which offers you templates, and you can create your own stuff. So I make my own YouTube thumbnails and stuff like that. Really easy to use. I've never done any kind of computer graphics before, but it's super easy to use. The next one is be true to your brand. So always deliver on your brand promise. And this is so important. I mean, I can't even stress how important this is, because if you're going to, establish a brand, and you're going to say that you're this, and you've established these standards, then it's so important to stick with those standards and deliver on them in order to earn customers' trust, and in order to earn repeat customers. I mean, that's the best thing to have, no matter what business you're in, is to have repeat customers, to have people, whether you have a store or a hotel or an online business blog or whatever, you want people to keep coming back, keep buying, or keep, becoming a customer. So it's so important to be true to your brand and always deliver.
Yeah, and there's one thing that people, I don't think they understand, is they try to make this super high quality service or product or whatever that they can't keep up delivering. So it's always better to under promise and over deliver. Like
Right.
if people are expecting something and you over deliver, that's going to create more customers than it is if you promise too much and you under deliver.
Absolutely true. Exactly. Don't set the bar high that you can't reach either, right? Set a reasonable bar, but yet don't sacrifice quality, and yes, over deliver. Exactly. And the final thing we always talk about, and it's so important, and we've mentioned it in episodes, we've mentioned it in blog posts, and that's to be consistent. And I use ourselves as an example. There's been weeks where, and I know we're only 3 months in, this is only episode 15, but there's been some weeks where, we've come down to the wire. We're like, what are we going to talk about? Or, what Mark was like, what am I going to write about on my blog post? We got to deliver something. We promised we deliver a podcast every Friday, and we're making sure we're consistent with that. We're trying to deliver on that promise. Chris used this when I interviewed Chris on episode 10. He used the perfect example about this, and it was the Oprah effect. And one of the reasons Oprah became so successful is because she was consistent. Every day, whatever time it was, at 3:00, the Oprah show was on, and she gained dedicated followers and people and fans because she was there for them every single day at the exact same time. People could sit on their couch and watch her show. So it's super important to gain. It's a super important aspect in order to build trust with your audience or with your customers. Just be consistent.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'll use an example as an example again. A couple of weeks ago, I don't know if a lot of you were following the blogs. There was one week where both myself and Serge were just really busy, and I ended up not being able to put out a blog that week. I had a little bit of a writer's block, I guess, but it was mostly just poor planning and everything. So the next week, I decided, got to over deliver this week. So I put out 3 blogs that week instead of the original 1. Not 2 to make up for the week before. I put out 3 just to compensate for my lack of planning the previous week.
Yeah. That's a very good point. That is a brilliant example. And I guess I want to also say that consistency doesn't just mean producing content or producing podcasts or everything, but it's also quality. Keep consistent with your quality. I mean, whether you're writing quality content or you're running a quality hotel, I mean, keep your hotel consistently high quality, and stick to those standards. Be consistent with your quality. Same as like a restaurant. I mean, this is huge. If you own a restaurant, a lot of people, they come out, open up this restaurant, have, the best quality food, and the quality really is awesome when it first starts out, but then later on you'll notice that as the time progresses, quality starts to decline, and then people wonder why their restaurants are shutting down, or they're losing business. And it's because they're not being consistent.
Yeah, basically, don't try and find a shortcut. It's going to be hard work at the beginning if you're just starting out, but it's going to be worth it in the end. Don't try and take shortcuts.
Absolutely.
And that kind of brings us into our next step here, and it's basically keep it simple. Don't like we said, don't try to overpromise things and under deliver. Just keep it simple. And one of the best examples that we can give you, which we'll talk a little bit about more later on, is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has been using almost the same logo since it started. So that's huge. I think Coca-Cola, Serge, you were saying, is over 100 years old or something like that now?
I'm pretty sure it's over 100 years old. I think they were established in 1890 or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive. And over 100 years, that logo really hasn't changed much.
Yeah. So next, we want to provide you with an example. So an example of multiple examples of successful and powerful branding. So the first one I want to talk about is Apple. And Apple, I mean, has got to be probably the most successful global brand of our time. And Apple's, it's minimalist and intuitive approach is a direct result of how it has such a global appeal. So, it's very simple, and they're going back to the logo, where the logo, is the simple apple, and I think, it's been the same since, they first started. I think the only thing they did was change the color of it, but, it's very minimal. It's very simple. Even their designs are very sleek.
Yeah, like you said, very simple. And I like to use this example as for Apple. When you look at its competitors like Samsung, Samsung introduces, so many different phones like the Edge, the Galaxy, the Note. It's got all these different kind of brands of the Samsung phone. Apple has always just been Apple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
That's
with
right.
a couple additional features. And it's just such a simple thing, but it still sells because it's so simple.
Yeah, exactly. They're a perfect example of keeping it simple, like you mentioned at the end of our steps to branding. So another thing they do, which is really impressive, is their Apple site is carefully translated in every localized international audience. It's translated for every localized international audience. So no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in Europe, and you're in France, or you're in China or Vietnam or South America, you're in Venezuela or something like that. I'm pretty sure they hire, and they must. I don't know this for sure, but they probably hire local translators to actually translate word for word. They don't just use an automatic translator. So I think that's really important because it makes people feel like that's a business that's a local business.
Yeah, and I want to agree with you on that. And they probably do hire specific translators for that. I highly doubt that they use a system like Google Translate. No offense to any Google reps that watch this, but your translator kind of sucks. So, I think that's an awesome step that Apple takes to personalize every product and every store location that they have across the country. That brings us into our next example is Starbucks. Starbucks, another huge brand that everybody knows. They actually have over 20,000 stores in 63 different countries. And
Unbelievable.
yeah, right. They've actually gone great lengths to make sure every Starbucks feels like a local coffee house. So similar how to Apple's translated their website, Starbucks has tried to do the same thing throughout every single country. They don't want to make it feel like, oh, this is an American brand. If you're buying Starbucks in Spain, they're going to make it feel like it comes from Spain, kind of deal. So that's definitely an awesome feature that these companies are doing.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And one example we have is in China. China and a lot of Asian countries, they're not big coffee people, right? And they're more like a tea or non-caffeinated drinks. So they've actually solved this by providing coffee-free drinks, and that's their menu. Which, believe it or not, being that they're a coffee place, they have no coffee in some of their locations, and that's just because they want to make it feel very local.
Next level branding.
That's right. That's right. So the next one I want to talk to you guys, and we've talked about a little bit about it already, and that's Coca-Cola. I mean, absolutely phenomenal powerhouse. I mean, they've been around forever. They've changed very little. They haven't changed their taste of their Coca-Cola. They haven't changed their logo. And the way I like to say it is, why change it? I mean, if it's not broken, why don't fix it, right? So, or don't fix it if it's not broken, however the saying goes. But you know, over initial trial and error. So obviously, when a company first starts, they've tested their Coca-Cola and came up with the perfect taste, which is partially the reason they are one of the most recognized global brands. But that's just a partial reason. It's simple. It's a simple brand. Like I said, they've changed very little in centuries. I mean, they've been around for a century almost. You know what I mean? Or if over actually, I think they started in I think it was in the 1890s or something like that. So I mean, over a century, and they haven't changed very much. And so the one brilliant aspect of marketing here and branding is Coke doesn't sell drinks in a bottle. They sell happiness in a bottle. And if you've ever watched a Coca-Cola commercial, I mean, some of these commercials, they give you like the tingles when you watch them because they're so inspirational. They're so, they give you that, they sell that happiness, and then you see those people crack that bottle of Coca-Cola and they drink it because they're, so happy. And they're kind of tugging on your heartstrings, which is absolutely amazing branding.
Yeah, and I think I would credit with Coca-Cola as being one of the top branders in the world, and like it goes back to how you said they even the flavors they don't like to change, but they like to appeal to all sorts of customers. And so when you look at Coca-Cola products, you look at Coca-Cola Zero, Coca-Cola sugar-free or whatever it's called, it's Coca-Cola Diet or whatever.
Diet Coke, yeah.
Flavors all the same. They've that's the thing that they won't change. They'll appeal to the different people who want no sugar or they want the 0 calories or whatever. They will not change their flavor, but they will appeal to whatever your taste requires, right?
That's right. That's it. That's exactly it. And going back to that selling happiness in a bottle, that's what they make, this human connection, and that's a huge part of what makes Coca-Cola so successful. I mean, it's a drink that's loaded with sugar and it's not very good for you. But when you watch their commercials and they connect with you, you want to go buy that bottle of Coke.
Yeah, and how about this one? This will be the last example that we provide for you, but just think on this for a moment, how powerful of a brander that Coca-Cola is when you consider that Coca-Cola is like the feature on the cups at the next example, McDonald's. Like that when you order a drink from McDonald's, Coca-Cola is on the actual cup itself, right? So like that's huge. That's branding genius. You got superpowers combined right there. But tying back in, like I said, McDonald's will be our last example here, but consistency, that's a huge one. Simplicity and consistency. With McDonald's, I don't know how long it's been around, but certain menu items, for as long as I've known, they haven't changed. It's always been the same.
Absolutely. I mean, there's always been a Big Mac. There's always been a McChicken, a Quarter Pounder. They haven't changed any of those aspects. All they did is it's almost like they have two menus. They have their original menu, which always stays the same. And then they have this other menu that kind of they tinker with. They test this and that, and they change the Angus burger and they change this, right? So it's very smart because they still appealing to those people who still like the traditional stuff. But then they're still playing around with other things and trying to find maybe that other little gold nugget that they can maybe keep around for a while. So I think that's really smart on their part.
I like that play on words there. McDonald's golden nuggets. That was good. I don't know if it was intentional, but I'm going to give you it.
I'm going to say it was. I'll take the credit for that.
Yeah, there you go. Chicken nuggets. Anyways, much like Starbucks, though, McDonald's has gone great lengths to localize their menus. Countries that can't eat certain meals, if they can't eat beef or they can't eat pork or whatever it is, they will customize that menu to adapt and fit those specific needs of people, and that's huge part of branding. That's what makes them so big globally.
Yeah, and you know what? I think there's a common theme with almost every one of our examples here, and some of the most successful companies, is that in order to be a global powerhouse in branding, you've got to customize your stuff to be local. So I mean, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, that's a huge part of branding. I mean, knowing your customers, so if I want to go branch out, if me and Mark owned a company, or, we wanted to start translating the podcast or having the podcast in other countries, we would have to really do our research, look at what those countries are interested in, translate it into their language so that it's understandable. And really do our due diligence to figure out what works in that country. And if we do that and we provide awesome quality content, our business would just blow up and become absolute powerhouse as well.
Yeah, and like you said, it just comes back to the marketing strategy, right? When you come to a marketing strategy, there's so many different tiers of strategy, like of marketing. There's localized, and then there's like if you want to go international, like you said, and no matter what you're looking at, if it's localized or if it's international, you come back to those 5 questions. Who are you catering for? What are their needs, kind of deal. Always consider these questions when you're trying to brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point, Marco. I mean, most people that are just starting off, and that's probably majority of our audience, you're not at a global level yet. And if someone, if there's a business out there that's listening to us that is on a global level, I mean, please leave a comment. We want to know. That'd be absolutely awesome. But most people do just start off locally. And that's why when anybody tells you or teaches you how to start your business, they always explain that, do your research here or locally or what your audience is. So, I mean, in the online world, it's a little bit more broad. You can, where you can cater to locally. You can cater to U.S., Europe, most English-speaking countries. If you speak English, and if you speak a second language, you can then cater to other countries as well that you can speak the native tongue. But for the most part, if you're a local business, then you just do your research in your local area, find out what's trending or what works in your niche locally. So, and really do the research, and then you can work your branding structure and your strategy around that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a good way to close off this episode. But before that, I just wanted to mention, as Serge said, if you are a big business and you're listening to us, we haven't done an interview in a while, so reach out. We'd like to do an interview with some people. So hopefully next week we'll have something lined up for you guys. But with that, I think that concludes this episode. As always, if you like our content, leave us a comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification on YouTube. That's our primary platform now, it seems.
Yeah, we're trying to, with the live, we're getting a good response with the live show audience, live podcast. So, if you're listening to us on the podcast platforms, then that's awesome. But YouTube's becoming a really popular thing for us. So.
Yeah, so do it all, man. Subscribe, like I said. Thank you guys for listening. Any final words from you, Serge?
No, like I said, if you're listening to us, maybe make sure you rate and review us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please just go down and comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification if you like our content. And just throw us a comment. We like to interact with our audience. If you're listening to us and you like what we're providing, let us know and start a conversation. I would love to be able to talk to some of our listeners. Sometimes it's kind of weird because we're on this side of the mic and we know people are listening because we could see that number, but we don't know who that is. So we really want to get to know you guys and we want to get to know our audience. So make sure you do that.
Yeah, and one more thing that we almost always forget this one, but we have a free book that we put out. So check it out. Head over to thewealthprojectpodcast.com/free book. Enter your email and you'll get your free copy emailed directly to you. Great way to get your business started, and we appreciate everybody. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Wealth Project Podcast. Visit our website at thewealthprojectpodcast.com. See you next episode.